What's up, guys? Now the question is the top in? I see a lot of mixed comments nowadays. Some people swear that the top must be in. Other people say, nope, we get an extended cycle. And there are people, which I think have the best answer, that say, we'll find out, we don't know. But let me speculate in this video about three things right here and show you exactly what that's based on. One, whether the top is in or not. Two, what would it mean for the altcoin market? Because we know how Bitcoin does in the bear market, and it's not that bad. But as altcoins did not have a run yet, what if a bear market now happens? And three, when will the next bottom be, and at what price? Right? So everything in this video is going to be wrong. Of course, don't stick me to this because I can call a price and it will never exactly hit that price, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's fun. So welcome to the FOMO Factory. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe, turn the bell notification on, and let's get into the content. Now, there are multiple indicators, metrics, whatever you want to call it, that you can use to determine if the top is in. And the basically one and only reason, and that's also where we start, that people now say like, oh yeah, the time is running out, the top is in or is going to be in soon, is the seasonality. And let's take a look at that. So seasonality, is the top in or not? According to the seasonality, we can make it very complex, but yes, well, is the top in, at least for this quarter, right? Because Bitcoin tends to always top out at the end of the post-halving year. And we'll go back to this chart in a second, but this is a really interesting one if you ask me. But the yellow, or it's green by the way, vertical lines, they show, hey, we had a top in December 2013. We had a top in December 2017, we had the top in November 2021. So it's all Q4. Now, if you are in that camp, like, yeah, top is in, don't be too fast. Q4 just started like a couple days ago, 17 days ago. We have more than that. And we also know that in Q4, a lot could happen. So if you are one of these people that's only about the seasonality and says like, I don't care what every other indicator saying, we only look at seasonality, then you should also try to keep in mind that the seasonality is actually something that can make you very bullish at this time, right? Because if you look closely in Q4 of the post-halving years, yeah, we had an October where we went up 50%. We had a November where we went up 400%. In 2017, we had October up 50, November up 50. We had December up 40, right? And shit. And in 2021, we had October up 40%, and December was, yeah, I mean, it was down with like 7%. Right, so even that's where it went down. It was not that you could say like, well, these were already real bear market numbers. So if excuse me, still sick, fucking hell, but if we are all about seasonality, then we should keep in mind like, yes, Q4 is something that we need to watch out for, but it's also very possible that in Q4 we do get a, I don't know, that's a lot, a 40-ish% rally, which could take Bitcoin still to around 140K, even, you know, if it's maybe a little diminishing, or 150K or whatsoever, and then go into the typical Q4 bear market. So that's a possibility, of course. Right, so let's not ignore that. There's a side note to this, by the way. There are not many data points. But I like to say, and that's what I've always said on this channel, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? The 4-year cycle so far has proven to be intact all the time. Every time people said this time was different, I said, guys, no, it's not, right? It is not. People were here calling for a, I don't know what kind of cycle, a 5.782 divided by, I don't know. And it was all not true, right? And now people completely shifted like 4-year cycle, right? Because that's where the doom is. And we like to look at that. But I must say, like, I don't change it because we are now there. Like, well, now I feel like it's extended. No, my base case is still the 4-year cycle remains intact until it doesn't. And it could be that this cycle shows us that it doesn't. Now, when, in my opinion, is this invalid though? Because you could say like, hey, if we make a new top in January, then it's extended, right? And I do think like, well, I don't know if that's true, because you saw like, hey, we could have a top in November, we could have it in December, right? So it's 1 month earlier. Hey, in that case, it could also be 1 month later and we get it in January, right? And if we make a new high in January, I can guarantee you will see everybody talking about an extended cycle. And that might be the case, but it could also be that that's how people get wrecked, because they think it's extended while it's actually not. Because what's the difference between December and January? Except that you're not allowed to play with firecrackers again, right? But there's not a big difference, right? Just 1 month, like, yeah, that doesn't make a whole 4-year cycle necessarily. So I'm a little in the middle, but I do feel like, yeah, if we go like deeper into Q1 of 2026 and we're still making new highs, then I think it's safe to say that the 4-year cycle is not intact anymore. But let's not talk about that yet. What you do notice, what I've drawn on this chart though, is that if you take it from cycle top to cycle top, here it was 461 days. If you take this cycle top to this cycle top, it was 1461. Here it was 1431 days. If we are about to, if we have seen the top, right, the latest top that we had, then it would be 1428 days. Could be. I mean, it's pretty close, right? It's pretty close. But it doesn't really mean anything, in my opinion. We could all say, like, hey, we can take an average, and that's more around 1450 days, and that takes us more into in November. But we are around that time, definitely. If you look from bottom to bottom, it took 1211 days. And here it took 1442 days. Now that is a big difference. So that already shows to me like, hey, there is a crack somewhere in the 4-year cycle. Because what does the 4-year cycle mean? You know, it could be halving to halving, top to top, bottom to bottom, top to bottom. Well, that's not 4 years actually. But it depends on how you define 4-year cycle, right? And if you look bottom to bottom, that's already not like the same, right? So I'll want to be a little cautious with the whole seasonality, because it doesn't really check out, especially since also the S&P, yeah, that's kind of all over the place when it comes to the 4 years cycle. You must also, yeah, nothing will come back to that, because that's more about bottom predictions. But here Bitcoin went down 86%. Here it went down 84%. Here it went down 77%. If you complete that riddle, that will be around 66% in the next one. And that could put Bitcoin at around 43K if this was the top. And I will come back later in this video showing you why I don't really think that this makes sense. But overall, if the seasonality has to speak, if the top is in or not, then yes, the top is definitely in according to the seasonality. Then we have the S&P divided by gold, which I think is a really interesting measurement as well, because every time, and I'm gonna show you actually. So if you look at the answer, no, this is saying that the top is not in at all, actually. Macro support. What do I mean by that? If you go, and you might feel like, what does it have to do with Bitcoin? It's just the way that it correlates with each other, right? So this is the S&P divided by gold. Now, why is gold important, and why is everybody nowadays talking about gold? Well, gold is going up, and they see gold as a flight to safety. They say Bitcoin is the digital gold. Yeah, no. I get that that's the idea behind it, but the charts are saying, well, gold doesn't go down with 80% in the bear market, really, right? And Bitcoin does. So it's not really the digital gold. It could be, but it will take a long time. But by then you will be not interested anymore because, hey, then you also have the gold upside. And although the last couple of months have been pretty interesting for gold overall, it's a boring ass asset. But if you look at the S&P divided by gold, look where it is sitting. It is sitting at a support level right here, and you can take it back for a long time, and this point keeps on coming back for a century now, all right? So this is a real big level. Now, I must say, like, hey, you can go below it, and it will eventually go back up above it again. But overall, this level is huge, huge. Right? Now, let's zoom in on this. Look, according to this chart, if this was an altcoin or whatever, this is where you press the buy button. It might sound scary, like it's here, but you buy at support, you short or sell at resistance. Don't short, don't do leverage, by the way. But this is a strong and a big level and an important level, and this is the level to be bullish on it, basically. If we overlay Bitcoin on this one, you can see the following. I don't know why it makes Bitcoin green, because it isn't green. But look at this. Every time the S&P goes up against gold, what happens? That's here, came off support, Bitcoin went up really hard. Here, S&P came off of support, Bitcoin went up really hard, went into a full bull market. Right? The last time we already went here a while back, right? When was that? Was in April. Remember April? Everybody was scared. That was when the market 2x'd. And now we are there again. So it's, it's only based on full history of Bitcoin. So I do feel like, yeah, you know what? That means quite a lot, actually, right? And I just want to look at it like this because, yeah, we can all say like, yeah, it's seasonality and that's it. But that's not it. There's so much more than that. And there are things that are more accurate than just the seasonality. And crypto and financial markets are known to wreck people. That's how the other smaller group of people make a lot of money, right? By taking some money of a lot of people. And I wonder like, but who is wrecked? The bulls were not wrecked, because it has been a bull market. The bears have been wrecked, right? And now people are bearish again. Right? And I wonder, like, man, I don't know. It's time for the bulls to get wrecked. But in order for the bulls to get wrecked, things first need to... It's too obvious for a lot of people, like, well, it's coming, it's the end. Like, it's not that easy. Crypto is not that easy. It can't be like that. Anyway, then we have the TA, one of the most important factors as well. Everything that we talk about, everything how we feel, what we trade, is printed on the charts. And that's saying that the bottom is, or the top, is not in. For sure it isn't. Side note though, almost every top indicator was wrong in 2021. So you don't want to also only stick to that, right? If you look at Bitcoin, if you looked at, I don't know, it doesn't matter, pi cycle top indicator, pure multiple, whatever it may have been, everything flashed in April. And although April, it was a very fat local top, it wasn't the end of the cycle. And these top indicators all corrected so hard during this move that they did not have the chance to fire again when we were actually here. So I don't want to give that disclaimer like, okay, TA is saying we are and indicators. We are far from that. But keep in mind, they have basically all been wrong before. So that can happen again. Right. Now, the thing is, though, that most indicators, they are far from flashing. If you look at our website that's releasing soon, Blockchain Decoded, we have one indicator, for example, that's the pi cycle top area. We all, sorry, we all know about the pi cycle top indicator, and that's just basically flash, right? Okay, fuck, that's too fast. What we notice though, what is the pi cycle top indicator? That's when the 111-day moving average and the 350 daily moving average x2 times 2, when they cross. But when they cross again, right? They crossed, but here they cross again. And that opens somewhat of a distribution area. And that distribution area is perfect for the people that say like, hey, I don't want to time the top. I just want to DCA out at top areas. I think that's way more smart than trying to time the top. Now, we've created an indicator for this, and this risk level is based on how far these moving averages are from each other, right? When they hit, they are of course close, so this thing goes to 1, right? Or 100%, in fact. But now they are like very far from each other, and the risk level now is 26%. Look, that a top is in when it hits like 70% or something, right? That sure. But 25% is actually a level where I would say like, wow, this is good enough to start DCAing in again, let alone DCAing out, right? And there are a lot more of these indicators that we'll come up with very soon. So, but this also, it shows like, well, there is not really anything close to a top. But again, all indicators are wrong, like they say, and some are useful. Then we have sentiment. Sentiment, you can say whatever you want. In my opinion, is one of the best indicators out there. Why do markets stop? Well, people get euphoric, they get happy. It's like, wow, this can never end. You know that Wall Street cheat sheet, right? And that's such a famous thing. Well, if you pop up that thing right now, there's nobody in his right mind that says, yeah, we are at euphoria. Like, euphoria, dude, like, people are calling for the top, like, now. Like, oh, no, it's gonna end. Like, whoa, what a euphoria, right? And you can say, like, well, people know how it works by now, so that's different. Wall Street cheat sheet, that thing existed long before crypto existed. Right? This is a macro thing. It's a psychology of people. People might get smarter, but their emotions don't change, and the way they trade also doesn't change, right? And sentiment is just mega bearish, especially for the altcoin market. And it's safe to say that the sentiment says like, no, the top is not in. People actually say yes, the top is in, but therefore the sentiment says the other way around, right? Markets don't top on low, interest or bad sentiment, typically, right? Curveballs could be thrown, but overall that's not the case. So that says the top is not in. Now, this is a real interesting one. This is the ISM, new manufacturers. And let me already tell you this. No, the top is not in. And it is just as accurate as the seasonality, maybe even better. Now, let me show you this chart. I don't know. We haven't been talking about this chart a lot. K-Dub has been talking about it more than I did. And I don't know if you have seen this chart before, so let me search for it, because this is, I think, one of the most interesting charts out there at the moment. So there you go. This is the chart, right? And this chart is pretty interesting in my opinion, because if you ever feel like what is an oscillator, then you can get this one, and like, here you go, this is it, right? Of course, I get it. It wicks below it, it wicks above it. Overall, if you look at this range, it's pretty sick, right? Now we are pretty much at the bottom of this one, right? Now, if you overlay Bitcoin on this, what do you notice? I checked off every single time that Bitcoin topped, right? Every single time, which was here, 2013, 2017, 2021. What do you notice on the ISM? It was pretty much around highs, right? Here, it was at the high. And here it was like even surpassed the high, it was already in a free fall. So if you look at this thing, Bitcoin so far, and therefore I feel like, hey, be a little careful with saying like, well, it's Q4, because it always topped out in Q4. Yes, seasonality has so far always been correct. So is this, right? And then it's a little hard, right? Because, hey, now we are at the point where we're going to find out like, well, one of the two is going to be wrong, right? This chart has been right for forever. Seasonality has been right forever. But they are now contradictive, so one is going to be wrong. Right? And therefore, I just don't want to blindly also follow this, but I'd like to make a list because we know that even charts that has been right forever, they're now going to be wrong. So I rather use as much info as I can and then just try to come to an average conclusion, basically, right? But this chart, like I said, this has been oscillating for a longer time, but Bitcoin just simply didn't exist back then. So we cannot see the correlation, but we can at least see like, wow, okay, this is at least an oscillator. So the chance that this thing goes up is really fucking high because it has history since for 75 years, right? It's not just like a decade that crypto has. But Bitcoin never tops whenever this thing is anywhere near the lows. Never happened. So you again could say like, well, seasonality, this also never happened, right? So when I look at the ISM, I'm like, okay, this is a big fat no, top is not in. Then we have, it's not really an indicator, but it's something we can work with. Alt season. Did we had that yet? No. Did the market top ever without an alt run? No. And again, for everything could be the first time. But let's try to add up this complete list and then see what the most logical outcome is, right? So we never had a top without altcoins running. Right? And you might feel like, yeah, but altcoins did run earlier. Yes. But altcoins are now very, very, very low compared to Bitcoin. So it seems unlikely to me that the whole market is now gonna top out. If Bitcoin is now gonna top out, then I do feel like, okay, but then that money is first gonna flow into the alts and then everything crashes. So even if we get a Bitcoin top, it doesn't necessarily have to be bearish for altcoins, right? It just seems really unlikely to me that we get a top if we pop up the alt season chart, right? We have the alt season chart right here. This is still Bitcoin? Yeah, okay, cool. So let's make Q orange again because this doesn't just make sense, right? I know we are in a green market, but we don't have to have green lines, right? So if we look at this, what do you notice? We had the Bitcoin top here, and we had the Bitcoin top here. And before that, we didn't really had a lot of information. Now it doesn't take us to 2013. Okay. So we had the Bitcoin top and, which was here. Bitcoin topped in 2017. The second leg of alt season started as soon as Bitcoin topped. So still, again, for the people that say, wow, altcoins are not going to run because Bitcoin is going to top, that doesn't make sense in the first place because here Bitcoin topped and that's where alt season kind of started, right? Here in 2021, we had the Bitcoin top over here. And that was also at the top of alt season. Now, if we have the Bitcoin top right here, that's at the lows right here. Again, for everything could be the first time, but I don't see how this makes sense unless we get some weird news that there's something bad going on with Bitcoin, maybe the latest upgrade that they had, and people still like crypto, but they're scared for Bitcoin and they fucking throw everything into altcoins. Bitcoin goes into a bear market and altcoins go parabolic. I don't even see that as a likely outcome. But that's the only reason that I can imagine that would happen. So I don't know. Then we have the global liquidity. Right? Everybody's talking about the M2, and not for a weird reason, because we need liquidity. Yes and no. Right? Still in a bullish trend though. All right, so what do I mean with that? Well, if you look at the M2, so let's overlay the M2 on this chart right here, right? So let's get rid of Bitcoin real quick, and let's overlay the global liquidity. Here you go. I just added this because otherwise people might feel like, hey, it's a pretty interesting indicator. Why didn't you discuss this? But overall, I do feel like, well, I don't know how accurate this is, because blue is a global liquidity, right? And what you notice, whenever Bitcoin topped, again, right around here, right around here, and right around here, global liquidity kind of did everything. Like it's kind of all over the place. Here, when Bitcoin topped, global liquidity still went up, right? It didn't go down until Bitcoin was kind of already that lasted for like half a year. And then the global liquidity started to go down. Here, Bitcoin topped. The global liquidity first went up, and it kind of went sideways, and then it went down. And from the moment it really went down, Bitcoin's bear market was already halfway there. And here, in 2021, the global liquidity still first went up and then went down. So it could go down, it could still go up, it could go sideways. I don't really know about it. I don't know. The global liquidity is a real interesting chart if you use an offset to see how the short and midterm works, but as a top indicator, I don't think it's like that accurate. It often functioned as a pretty good bottom indicator though. Here it marked the bottom pretty well. Here it marked the bottom very well as well. And here it marked the bottom also very well. So when we are later on this channel gonna look at bottom indicators, then we're definitely gonna include this one. But as a top indicator, not really. Not really. So therefore, I just said it like yes and no, right? It doesn't mean shit. Then we have the dollar, because a strong dollar, bad for risk assets, right? At least that's what they say. I think it has no meaning. I didn't put a note there as well. Why did I say that? Yeah, if you look at the dollar, right? You could say, right? Let me remove this one real quick. You could say like, well, the dollar, look at this. It's in this channel right here. So good chance that it will go up. And that aligns pretty perfectly with the timing of the season. And that makes the bear market at this point make sense. And that's true. If Bitcoin indeed goes down when the dollar goes up. But that's kind of the thing that I don't really see happen structurally. If you look at the Bitcoin tops again, right, and you look what the dollar did, here the top for Bitcoin was in, right, and the dollar kind of went sideways / down. Here the top for Bitcoin was in, and the dollar first went down really hard, then it went sideways, and then it went up. Here, the top for Bitcoin was in. And here, the dollar first went sideways and then really went up. And so also, kind of the same as the last one that we looked at. The dollar going up necessarily doesn't really mean that the top for Bitcoin is in. For example, here, the dollar went on a huge run. And what happened to Bitcoin in the meantime, it went up really hard as well, right? This thing went absolutely crazy over there. and we have more of these moments where the dollar went up and where Bitcoin went up. For example, after this flash crash in 2021, dollar was at the same level in the parallel channel as it is right now. Nuts, right? And Bitcoin also went nuts, and altcoins even went nutser. So, yeah, based on that, I'm in the camp like, there's a good chance that the dollar will go up at this point. What does it mean for crypto, though? No, I don't know. It could go up really hard, could go down really hard. I have no clue. All right, so that's the first step. There are more indicators. We could dive, deeper into the TA. We could take a look at way more other things. But as far as the most important indicators, most indicators saying top is not in. Some indicators saying like, well, be careful jumping to conclusions. And actually the only thing that says that top is in is the seasonality. But like I said earlier, again, there are other things like the ISM, which is at least just as accurate as a seasonality, saying that the top is absolutely not in. Right, so it would be really unwise to say that it is in, purely based on seasonality. Now, again, if the top is in, right, what would it mean for altcoins? It really depends. It really depends. Again, if the top is in right now, and Bitcoin goes into a bear market, it kind of depends, like, hey, what does the Bitcoin dominance do? Because if you look at the Bitcoin dominance, did it ever go skyrocket during a Bitcoin bear market? No, it at least went down really hard, or somewhat sideways at the lows, right? But at this point, we are at the highs. So the best guess is to say like, well, this probably goes down, right? And if and when it goes down, then it might go sideways, right? So even if the Bitcoin top is in, it could mean that altcoins are still about to outperform Bitcoin on the way down. And, based on how much Bitcoin goes down, how much altcoins outperform Bitcoin, that could even mean that altcoins go up. Also, like I showed, in 2017, alt season started basically when Bitcoin hit its top. So what it means for alts, yeah, that's hard to say. There are people that simply say like, well, if Bitcoin goes down 70%, altcoins, they go to complete zero, of course, right? And overall, that is true. But that is also because if you look at the Bitcoin bear markets, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing right now. Here we go. If you look at the Bitcoin bear markets, right, what happened? The Bitcoin dominance was really at a level right here, right? And it never went like... It's you don't see an altcoin outperformance right there, right? Here as well, if you look at the Bitcoin bear market started here, Bitcoin dominance even went up there, right? Because it was already low at that point. So then altcoins, they lose against Bitcoin, they lose their Satoshi valuations against Bitcoin. Yeah, and if Bitcoin also goes down, then yeah, of course, altcoins go down harder. But what if Bitcoin goes down, but altcoins don't lose their Bitcoin valuation? Because we haven't seen that altcoin outperformance in the first place, so there's nothing to give back to Bitcoin. We already gave it back this cycle the whole time. Then, potential bottom area. Now, in my opinion, this is also, where it gets interesting. First off, it depends, of course, like, did it start, right? Is the top in? If you look at this, first off here, right? Bitcoin down 86%, 84%, 77%. If you complete that, then continue that, then it's around 66% from the last high, and that could put Bitcoin at around 43K. Right now, possible for sure. It is possible. It's twice, more than twice actually. It's about 3 times above the previous low. Right here, Bitcoin was 3K. Here it was 15. Right, it was 5x above the previous low. So that diminishes. Could be the case, definitely. What I do find interesting though is that if you look at the 200 weekly moving average, you can see that Bitcoin in every bear market at or around that level found its bottom, right? And let me make very clear, whenever we hit the bear market and we are far in it already, just like now, like people are trying to time the top. That's all they talk about, right? By then, people will try to time the bottom again. I would sincerely advise you, just don't. Like the last cycle, again, whether you bought at, because that's where it broke below the 200 weekly moving average, right? The 200 weekly moving average was sitting at 23K, but Bitcoin actually went to 15. Yeah. But then again, it here went to 125. If you look back at it, do you really think you would regret buying at 23K? Just DCA the area. And just like the Pi Cycle top area on Blockchain Decoded, we also have the Pi Cycle bottom area, right? The accumulation area. So that's an insane buying indicator that we're going to release. But it tops or it bottoms around 200 weekly MA, right? Here again. And here we hovered around it. Now, at the moment, it's coming in at $54,000 at this moment. But as long as Bitcoin is sitting above it, which it kind of always does, the moving average also goes up, right? So this moving average will not go lower, right? Unless Bitcoin now goes to 20K and stays there forever. Then eventually this thing will, okay, right? But this moving average doesn't go down, it goes up. Now, I checked out, like, hey, in a bear market, because in a bear market where Bitcoin goes down, of course, the moving averages, they go up slower than in a bull market, right? So in a bear market for Bitcoin, how much did the 200 weekly moving average go up? In that period of 1 year, in a bear market, it went up with around 40%, right? Let's say the top is in, and a bear market usually lasts for, 1 year. So let's say from this point, we just had the top, right? Maybe 40%. That's $76,000. Right now, that's again, if the current top is in, and we get a bear market as bad as last year, last cycle. Well, 1, there's no guarantee that the top is in right now. 2, cycles diminish so far. So there is a good chance that, it won't go down that hard, right? So that means the moving average goes up slightly harder than 40%. So that could mean 80, 70K, right? That's where that will come in at this pace. So according to that, 80, 70K. Now, chart-wise, kind of makes sense, right? Because we had the top here in March. We had a huge retest here in April this year. So this is a big level. This could be the bottom for the next bear market. What's also possible, though, is that we do something like last cycle, because Bitcoin went below the moving average with about, that's a lot, 35%. Right, so if you take 35% off of around this level, right, then that's coming in over here, give or take, 50, right, 50K. But then again, it is already way surpassed that. So then we have to have a real, quick bear market. But so, then this could be around the level. And also has a lot of points that I feel like, hey, okay, makes sense. And now it's up to you to come to the conclusion what's worth it, right? Because if we go there, right, worst case for Bitcoin, worst case in this case, Bitcoin goes down around 50%. So if you say like the top is in, maybe, because you don't know for sure, maybe not, I don't know. Bitcoin can also run up really hard in Q4, right? Well, what's the worst that can happen? Well, it can always go to zero, but based on this, right? That you lose 50%. What's the risk that you miss out on? Well, we know what it could do in a post-halving year. You could also miss out on the same amount, basically. But that's the worst case. Because again, if we base it off of how it usually moves, then it's around 30% from this level. Because you can say like, well, usually it goes down 70%. That's diminishing. Plus, we already had a part of that. We are already down 17% from the top, right? So if it goes down here, then it's down around 40% in total. Does it sound like a lot? But it's also not that weird because in the last cycle, we had a lot of retail that's fucking scared. And they sell off a lot faster than the institutions who are a little bit more resilient for all of this, right? They are like, also they are humans and they sell, but it's a little different than the typical resale panic selling. So ask yourself, like, even if you, despite against, most things, think that the top is in, then is the downside worth it to now say like, I'm out against to the potential upside? And we haven't really spoken about the potential upside right here in this video. But I mean, look at this chart, it's Bitcoin. I think we all know what the upside is, right? Missing out on Bitcoin is just fucking risky, really risky. But are you willing to take that risk because it might? There's a small chance that it might now go here or here. That's something that I'm not going to answer for you, of course. That's something that you have to check out for yourself, what's worth it. Overall, this is kind of how I look at it right now. I am not sitting here with my calendar only and ignoring the rest. I'm not saying like it's all about seasonality. And even if, like I said, then it also might go up really hard, because if you do look at the seasonality, you know that Q4 is really explosive, especially for altcoins, actually. So that's kind of it. And again, about the sentiment, look at this chart. Look at this chart right here. Let me remove a little bit of noise on this one, but look at this chart. This is the parallel channel that the altcoin market without stablecoins is in for this whole cycle so far, right? And even in the cycle before that COVID, it was perfectly in here. We had the top like this. The thing has been kind of accurate for 8 years already, right? But in real parabolic bull markets, we go way above it, right? Worst case scenario so far is that we hit the lower trend line. A ranging, just nice case scenario is that we hit the upper trend line, and a bull case scenario, which so far always happened, is that we go way above it, right? So we are now at the bottom. So aren't we at this moment already at the worst case scenario? I know that you think like, well, yeah, we can go below it. Yes, sure we can. But based on what we have seen in the last 8 years, we are at the lowest point. So why does it make sense to now be bearish? Be bearish here, or be bearish when we fly up, way above this thing? But at the lows, show me one time in this chart where these lows were not a good buying opportunity, where you look back and be like, oh yeah, I wish I sold there. Never, right? Never. So I'm looking at this chart right now for the altcoin market. And I know that whenever crypto goes down 3%, there are always two people coming to this channel saying, haha, But I always think like, it's now again, just like April, for example. This was a killer buy that I made and that I've shared on this channel, right? Even though it just went only here, this was real good for my portfolio. We are now there again, right? And again, it might go below it, but that's a matter now of placing your odds, right? And the last decade basically have shown us like, yeah, betting against this doesn't work, right? So why would you keep on doing that? It doesn't make sense. So the altcoin market is now here. Also, it's another indicator that maybe shows like why it doesn't really make sense that the top is in, because this chart again has been, that was the buy for the last 8 years. So if this is the top, it's good. It's not logical. Probably missed a lot in this video, but my videos take way too long lately. But then again, I cannot put this in 10 minutes. I think that this is at least interesting for me. Altcoins on the Bitcoin pair, you know, at the moment sitting really low right now. And I feel like, man, also with this chart, if you look at highs, if you look at lows, then I just look like, okay, where we are right now, and we are now closer to the lows and the highs, so be bullish. It should not, I think, be much more complicated than that. So that's it for today, guys. If you like the content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the bell notification on. Let me know down below, by the way, do you think the top is in or not? And why? I can add it to the list. I'm very curious because I probably forgot a lot, but this is what I came up so far. So thanks and enjoy your weekend already. What day is it? It's Friday, right? Yeah, enjoy your weekend.